Well, again, I thought since we had such a special topic we're going to cover together today that I would dress up in honor of such an important uh, topic. And yeah, okay, you guys are laughing at me. Um, Actually, though, today I think, I'd like to cover something that I hope you find interesting and helpful. It's something that I think I've told you before, this particular part of speech, I don't think I truly recognized in the past. And there were oftentimes I'd have struggled with particular verbs and I didn't know there'd be a verb and then also a preposition, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so in the course of preparing for you guys, I came across this um, particular part of speech, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. English, the more I study English for you guys, the more I see it's such a kooky language in so many ways. But, it is the lingua franca now. It's the language God has chosen to be the most spoken in the world. And so we'll take advantage of that and all the resources that exist in English, and its connection and link to Greek grammar in so many ways to help us be more effective in our ability to understand and more importantly to apply and teach the word. So let's jump right in um, to this. Pull up. There we go. All right. Okay, and this all too familiar figure now, and we've really been focusing attention for the most part on on the structural diagram because of what it yields for us in understanding our uh, as we break down a particular text and interpret it. All right. So again, this familiar steps here. We're on that step of diagramming. And let me just remind you, the process for diagramming is first identifying that main clause, then identifying the phrases, other phrases and clauses by looking for the connector words. And we spent a lot of time on those connector words, particularly conjunctions and prepositions. Now, when we talk about prepositions, try to think of those, and there's so many of them. I forget, what did we mention? I think 150 or more prepositions in English. And try to think of prepositions sort of and how they work is a word that links. Conjunctions link, but they link in a certain way. There's the coordinating conjunction that links or connects words, phrases, or clauses that are grammatically equal. Those are the coordinating. And then the subordinating ones connect a clause that is subordinate to. Now, prepositions, they can do that as well. They can link a clause, or excuse me, a phrase to a particular word in a subordinating fashion. But think of them more primarily as a link. They're linking a word to another word. All right. And we looked at, there are three ways that they do this. Again, often the prepositions function to link. Usually the most common way is they link a noun to another word. Those are called prepositional phrases. Okay. And then we also talked about an infinitive. An infinitive uses the preposition to, and sometimes for, rarely, but usually the preposition to with a verb, and in a sense, it links that verb to another word through the preposition. Okay. And then there's a third category. There's a third use, and that is what is called a prepositional verb. Prepositional verb. This is a verb which then is followed by a preposition that is connected to that verb. And in a sense, that preposition is linking the object that follows it to the verb. All right. Well, I'll go through several examples just to show you what I'm talking about in this. But again, you can think of it. These are really the three ways that we see prepositions used in English, primarily in a prepositional phrase. Like I said, most of those 150 prepositions you'll see attached to a noun, and it's linking that noun to another word. Often we will see infinitives, which is translated in English with the word to, T-O, preposition plus the verb in its root form. And then we have this third category, not as common as the first two, but what we do see it enough in Scripture that I felt like it would be important for you to, it's important to cover it with you. And in a sense, it's a verb plus a preposition, which in a sense is linking an object to that verb. So let me show you some examples of that. And then if you have questions, we can cover that. So here we have this passage. Let's first just identify the prepositions in this passage, okay? We'll have Tabs do that for us, all right? Since his brain is fresh after studying all these deep theology concepts, why don't you just, all I want you to do, Tabs, is just identify the prepositions that you see in this passage.
Okay. Yes, Pastor. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Um, Prepositional phrases would be of the gospel.
Okay, just the prepositions. You don't need to
Just
identify.
of.
Okay,
Okay, po.
of.
And then for it is the power, and then of God, of
Okay, good.
for salvation, for
All right, good.
to everyone, to who believes.
Okay,
I think so.
remember who is a relative pronoun, which,
Relative pronoun. Okay, Pastor.
yeah.
And then to the Jew first, to,
Okay, good.
and to the Greek, and then the for I am not ashamed.
Okay, good. Now this initial for is actually functioning as a subordinating conjunction
Oh,
in this case, but it looks like a preposition. That was that tricky one. The word for can work both ways. But notice basically we have three prepositions that we see here. We see for, of, and to, right? Those are the only three that we see here repeated a few times. Okay, so let's just sort of take a look at each of these. Let's look at the four prepositions. Preposition for that we see here, right? For I am not ashamed. So I already sort of mentioned that. This is actually for is functioning as a subordinating conjunction here. If you remember, we talked about that, years and years ago, it seems like. All right, so again, a subordinating conjunction introduces a dependent clause. In this case, the clause is here. Now, if we can review just briefly, if you remember, when it comes at the beginning of a paragraph or the beginning of a sentence, it's actually functioning in a subordinating sense to another thought in a previous sentence or paragraph. Okay, so this for here is actually linking this clause, and I am not ashamed, to what Paul has said earlier. In this case, I am eager to share the gospel with you. He says earlier before this, why is he eager? For or because I'm not ashamed. And really in English, I think because would be a better way to translate this to reflect what he's saying. Okay, let me some here quick. Now, for I'm not ashamed. So for in this case is functioning as a conjunction. Now the next one, Tabs. How is this for functioning? For it is the power of God. And maybe we
for
can
it
do
is
this.
power of God.
Sorry, let me just pull it up too. So for it is the power of God. How is that for functioning in this sentence?
I think, Pastor, it's functioning as a prepositional phrase.
Okay, remember, a prepositional phrase is a preposition plus a noun. Is that what we see here? Is it just the word it that follows for?
It is. It's. There's a verb of being, and then there's an object.
Yeah. So what is that? It is the power. Is that just a noun? Is this phrase just a noun?
No, Pastor, it's not.
Yeah, what is that? It is the
Um,
power. Is that a phrase or a clause?
it's a phrase.
Okay, let me see here. Remember, a
It's a clause,
phrase.
Pastor. Sorry.
What's that? Yeah, a phrase
Yeah, it's a
has
clause.
no subject and verb. Remember, a clause
Has a
has
subject.
a subject and a verb. It is subject verb. So for here, if it's followed by a clause, you remember it must be functioning like a conjunction, not a prepositional phrase.
Okay.
Okay, remember this was we talked about this, I don't know, back in December, I think, November. But there were those two cases, right? How do you know if it's functioning as a prepositional phrase or a subordinating conjunction? Is you look for the noun. Okay, is it followed by a noun? In this case, no, right? Because it's followed by it is the power. And that is a clause. So therefore, for is a subordinating conjunction again. Okay, it's telling us why I am not ashamed. Right? Why I'm not ashamed of the gospel? For it is the power of God. Does that make sense?
Yes, Pastor.
Okay, I know you're tired from reading all those books, so we'll give you a little. Okay, you have a chance to redeem yourself here. All right, let's look at the next four. All right, for salvation. How is that? Is that a preposition? That for in this?
Yes, Pastor.
It is. How do we know that?
Pastor. Because it's a preposition plus a noun. So it's
Yep.
a prepositional phrase.
Yep, we have a preposition plus the noun. So this is a prepositional phrase. All right. And it, I think, is modifying, in this case, the power of God for salvation. What kind of power? Okay. Let's look at the next set here. The word to. Let's look at these for a minute. See, we have to everyone. Is that a prepositional phrase or something else?
Is it still me, Pastor?
Yeah, sorry, Tabs. Yeah. No, you're
Okay.
still on the hot seat here.
Okay, Pastor. To everyone, I think it's a prepositional phrase.
Yeah.
Still a prepositional phrase.
Yep, because we have the noun there, everyone. Okay. To everyone. Now let's see. Our next to is to the Jew. How about that one?
Still a prepositional phrase, Pastor.
Yep. It's not an infinitive because it's followed by a noun, not a verb. And to the Greek. How about that one?
It's prepositional phrase, Pastor.
Yep. Okay, good. And all of these again are together. Salvation, what kind of salvation? To everyone, to the Jew, to the Greek. All right. Okay, good. Now, the last preposition we see in this passage is of. And we see of God here. Let's do that one first. Whoops. I meant to. Okay, of God. And then we'll talk about of the gospel. Okay, so is this a prepositional phrase?
Yes, Pastor.
Yep. It is, because it's followed by a noun. Okay, now, of the gospel. You guys see that? I am not ashamed of the gospel. Now, what does this look like? You have
It looks like. Sorry, Pastor.
No, go ahead.
It looks like a prepositional phrase.
It does, right? Because it looks like I've got the preposition of plus the noun gospel. All right, so it looks like a prepositional phrase. But here's the problem. Actually, in this case, of is part of the verb because the gospel is the object. I am not ashamed is not the complete thought. In English, there are these, really they're idioms called prepositional verbs, which is a verb with a preposition that goes with it that's implied. So in this case, ashamed of is the full verbal idea, not just ashamed. Okay. Yeah, I know. More English complexities. You know, what is going on here? There are some verbs in English that contain with it a preposition at the end of the verb. And again, I think it's more, I've seen in some English grammars, they describe it as like an English idiom. It's just the way that the English language sort of evolved with certain kinds of verbs taking on with it a preposition in English. Okay. And so technically, this sentence, I is the subject. Let me do it this way. I is the subject. The verb is am not ashamed of. I'm sorry, technically it's am ashamed of, not is a modifier. Okay. And then the object is the gospel. Okay. Now, I'll go through some examples with you and then we'll talk about, well, how do I know which it is, right? Because it sure looks like a prepositional phrase to me. It meets the definition of as a preposition. The gospel is a noun. How do I know that of goes with ashamed rather than the gospel? Okay, well, let's look at these prepositional verbs. All right, we'll spend a little time. Again, there are a number of examples, prepositional verbs. The most common prepositions you will see used with these verbs are the ones that I show here. About, at, for, from, in, of, on, and to, and with. Okay, don't worry about memorizing those. I'm just giving you that as a piece of information. It's not all 150 prepositions that you will see connected to verbs like this. There's only really a handful. So here's some examples. He prayed about the decision. Okay, he prayed is not the full idea being conveyed in this sentence. So the verb here is really prayed about. The subject is he, the object is decision, and prayed about is the verb. Okay, so you wouldn't say this, he prayed the decision. Okay, that would be an awkward way to say it in English. Okay, if you were to say that in English, a person would understand you, but the way they would, the better way to say it is to say he prayed about the decision or prayed for the decision. Okay, let me give you another one. I listened to the sermon. Okay, again, the prepositional verb here is listen to. It's not just that he's not just saying I listened, but I listened to the sermon being the object. So again, the subject is I, the verb is listened to, and then the object is the what receives the action is the sermon. Now again, a person can say I listened the sermon, and someone might have an idea what you mean, but in English, that just doesn't sound correct. It's I listened to. Jonathan, you had a question?
Yes, Pastor Tim.
Hi.
Concerning the grammar, uh, yes, we know the they are first written in Greek. So, but we are also studying in the English grammar. So, what is the main consideration? Is it how it is constructed in Greek or in English? Because seeing the interlinear, I just see the I am not ashamed as one word.
Correct. This is an English nuance. This is an English issue.
Um,
So yeah, there are not.
so my question is, am I
Go ahead.
more concerned with how it is constructed in the translation, or how is it originally constructed in Greek?
Yeah, that's a good question. To my knowledge, Greek does not have prepositional verbs. However, there are certain verbs that are translated in English as prepositional verbs. So you're correct. I'll just show you this since you brought it up now. You're so much quicker. I was going to bring this up later, but Jonathan's always got good questions. So we'll talk about it now. Okay, let me see. Here we go. Whoops. Let me just pull up Bible Hub for you. And okay, Romans 1:16. Interlinear. I shouldn't have shown you guys interlinear, man. Now you're like asking all these hard questions. Okay. Actually, it's good. I'm glad you asked this. Notice here, Romans 16, the negative, not, for, and not, and then here's the verb. How it translated, the literal translation is I am ashamed of. Okay, because in English, you would not say I am ashamed the gospel. You would say I am ashamed, not ashamed of the gospel. So this is an English idiom. It's an English nuance. And it's something you need to be aware of because you will be diagramming in English. Okay, and so I just want you to understand sometimes certain verbs, Greek verbs, are translated in English as a prepositional verb. That is a verb with that prepositional ending, because in English, that is what is would be the common under later. And I'll show you how to do this. Is when you see this in your verse, look at the interlinear and see. Sometimes, notice here, there's no preposition. Do you guys see that? Here's the verb, which I am ashamed of. And then immediately we have the article gospel. There's no of here in the Greek. You guys see that? So there's no prepositional phrase here. Come across these situations where you want to understand, is this a prepositional phrase or is this a prepositional verb that I'm dealing with? And in this passage, we're dealing with a normal Greek verb, but in English, it's translated as a prepositional verb. Okay? So this is one of those things that you won't have to worry about when you study Greek, but you will encounter it in English translations because this is just something in the English language. It has these kinds of verbs that have prepositions with it at times. All right. So we do need to talk about this because, as I said, we'll be doing much of our exegetical work in English, English translation. So we need to be aware of these things. Does that answer what you were asking, Athan?
Yes, Pastor Tim. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you for answering that.
Tim?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is the purpose of being able to identify the prepositional verbs for the purpose for diagramming, because if looking at this now, identifying this as a prepositional verb would affect the way we would divide the sentence, right?
Exactly. So I'll show you if I can get my, what's going on here?
Pastor, you're freezing, Pastor. Actually,
Yeah, can you hear me though?
Yeah,
Yes,
can
yeah,
hear
we can
you.
hear you, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm having some difficulty in Zoom here. Okay. Let me see if I can close a couple of. See, Jonathan, you messed everything up here, trying to get all fancy with these hard questions. All right, it's still frozen. See, can I do this? All right. Let me do this.